Imagine being afraid to wear a kippah. Not in the 1930s, but today. As we commemorate the destruction of both temples and the long and painful exile that followed, I'd like to share some thoughts that I believe are relevant to our lives today. When the Torah in Deuteronomy speaks about exile, it describes it as a life of fear, insecurity, and constant danger. It says, you'll find no quiet. The life you face shall be precarious. You'll be afraid night and day. For centuries, that fear was all too real. But growing up in Philadelphia and living in New York, it felt like things had changed. I wore my kippah openly, and I never experienced antisemitism. Even later, after I moved to Israel and I traveled with my family to Europe, I felt safe. But something began to shift about 10 or 15 years ago. Suddenly, Jewish life abroad didn't feel so safe anymore. There was a rise in anti-Semitic sentiment and violence. Suddenly, synagogues needed security. Jewish schools installed gates. And so, as a precaution and at the urging of my family, I reluctantly agreed to do something that had once felt unthinkable. I exchanged my kippah for a hat. You see, for me, the kippah is not a mere symbol. It's a vital part of my identity. Wearing it is a declaration of who I am. But faced with a changing and increasingly hostile reality, I felt I had no choice. So it was initially difficult, but I slowly adapted. And so on our most recent trip to France, I reached again for the hat. But this time, it wasn't just any hat. It was my Philadelphia Eagles cap. And for those who don't know, the Eagles won the Super Bowl this year, and so wearing that hat, a funny thing happened. People saw the hat and smiled. They called out, "Go Birds!" This happened on one occasion, just minutes after he had walked past a loud and aggressive pro-Palestinian rally. I shudder to think what the reaction might have been had I been wearing my kippah. With my Eagles cap, I was met not with hostility, but with admiration and respect. The hat felt magical, protected me, and it felt like the perfect solution to my travels abroad. But as I thought about it further, I realized that it wasn't a good solution at all. I don't want to wear a magical hat. In fact, I don't want to wear a hat at all. What I want is to be who I am, a proud, visible, kippah-wearing Jew who can walk freely in the streets, speak Hebrew, and live my Jewish identity in confidence, not fear. And so, as lovely as the vacation was, I found myself yearning to return home to Israel, to return to a place where I can remove my hat and wear my kippah proudly. Yes, life in Israel today is far from easy. The stress can be overwhelming. But it's also my home and the home of the Jewish people. And is the one place where we can live our Judaism fully, openly, and without shame, in both private spaces and in the public square. And so, it's great to be home again.